Welcome to DarkDox Digest episode 24 with your host Christian Coffin. Today is June 15, 2019.
Para comenzar, le voy a dar un balón back to Billy Beck. Let's wave that flag. The time has come for evolution, not no revolution. The only thing I want on the other my 45, 'cause you've been starting and you ain't there. You can watch football, they can tell. Rid yourself of care.
We would like to share a prayer with all of you who risk it all to seek and share truth for the betterment of humanity. This broadcast is brought to you in part by Eternal Affairs Media and DarkDox.com.
Welcome to DarkDox Digest, episode 24. I am your host, Christian Coffins. We have a special 2-hour extravaganza for all of you, and we are live, so please feel free to call us at 845-262-0989. That's 845-262-0989. We have Brendan O'Leary of Resist the Grove and our lovely Emmy Frost on the line. We have a lot of media deconstruction, a lot of Pedogate stuff to go over, a lot of deaths, lots of murders, and I believe we're going to be having Greg Fernandez Jr., also of Resist the Grove, and The Gray Stage, the book and soon-to-be film from DarkDox.com, calling in later with a couple of questions about Sacred Owls. So to kick this off, why don't you guys say hi, and what do you guys want to talk about first?
Hi, this is Emmy Frost. Oh, gosh. As you know, it's been quite a while since I've been on the show, so you guys might want to take the lead, and then I'll just sort of follow.
Sounds good. How you doing, Brendan?
I'm doing well. Getting ready for the Grove. Don't know quite to what extent our influence will change things this year. It's going to be interesting to see what happens and how many people show up. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, we've been getting a little bit of press. They haven't been mentioning us by name, but we have been mentioned as the protesters who are upset about conspiracy theories and occult rituals at the Grove. And after watching that Teddy Bear's Picnic movie finally, which is available for free download at DarkDox.com until we get a cease and desist order from the Spinal Tap cucks, and it's the same thing as the protesters out there. But the funny thing is that in that film, it's the official narrative that they're talking about, like where they're more upset about the fact that women aren't allowed in the Grove, which is something that, we've been kind of, of course, Sacred Owls is a guy and a girl. That's me and my partner, Ariel. And when I taught her about all this stuff and showed her the videos and stuff and the annals, she was like, yeah, what the hell is this? Where's the Me Too movement? Where's all the feminists, being upset that world leaders are discussing policy and setting agendas for a new world order, and you have all these bankers and politicians and CEOs going to this place and bringing in underage prostitutes, and there's allegations of murder and all kinds of things, snuff films, and where's the feminist? So I think it's interesting now that the LA Times is now talking about how women aren't allowed, and also they're up in arms about how what are they spending $150,000 a year on police? Is that correct, Brendan?
Yeah, for the Sonoma County Sheriff's Department to protect the Grove from evil protesters and whatnot, and basically.
They're spending $150,000 a year so Brendan and Greg don't cause any trouble.
Yep.
film, Sacred Owls, They Are Here to Save the World, which is available for free at DarkDox, or you can get the DVD for $13. You'll see, we were there last year on the day of Cremation of Care, and it was us, our dog, and Brendan and Greg. The four of us and a dog, we are the resistance.
Well, for their defense a little bit, they are there also to protect us, so appreciate that.
What was that?
They also are there to protect us to a certain extent and to defend our right to assemble. We've been asked to leave before by security guards, and we've been able to stand our ground because they're like, no, they can stand there. But they never want to talk much. And it turns out that they use tax dollars, and then they're reimbursed by the Grove after the fact. And the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors, a few of them, came up for review to keep this thing going, and they objected to, having the sheriffs, guard and enforce no women allowed kind of stuff, and hence the added media this year. It's very interesting to me, the whole thing about segregation of the sexes, because throughout the year they have ladies' night both in the club and at the Grove, and if the Grove wanted better press, they would probably say that. But no press is the best press for the Bohemian Club. So
right, you can't be a secret society if you're out in the open. It's only recently, Bohemian Grove is known to some in these circles of information and intelligence as Bilderberg West. And only recently, this past year or so, did the Bilderberg group actually create a website for the first time and go public being like, yeah, okay, we exist at all, where there was media blackouts every year. And every now and then you'll get articles about the Bohemian Grove, but mostly in reference to Alex Jones' film, what was that, back in 98, I think it was?
2000.
It was the year before 9/11. That's pretty interesting, too. Huh.
Yeah.
It was almost like, oh, shit, we have this footage of the Bohemian Grove. We need a distraction. 9/11 happens.
It's the same year, I believe, that Teddy Bear's Picnic came out. It was right.
Yeah.
Almost like they had to talk. Yeah, that was I don't know. I'm just speculating, but I think that movie was helped to, do a little pullback. But
yeah, and then there's that interview with Gary, with what's his name, Harry Shearer, where he's saying, oh, I'm a proud member. We're just a bunch of artists and musicians, and we're just going there for camaraderie and to cavorts. I love that word, cavorts. I want to go over a couple of things that were in the DarkDox network, get them out of the way, and then we can have some free play time. This is from the Mind Unleashed, which is a dubious outlet, I'll give you that, but there's a lot of there's a lot of links to other articles that are a little bit more legitimate. The official child molesters in Alabama will now be chemically castrated. Republican Alabama Governor Ivory signed a bill into law Monday that will require some sex offenders to undergo chemical castration 1 month prior to being released from custody, and will also ensure that offenders have to foot the bill for the treatment. That's I think a step in the right direction. I'm all for it. If you are convicted, and when I say convicted, I mean beyond a shadow of a doubt, with a jury unanimously saying, yeah, you did this, there's hard physical evidence or a witness that's really bona fide, I'm all for the death penalty. Because frankly, we don't need these people around. And now you're just going to have, someone who is chemically castrated and upset about that being released into the public. What do you think they're going to do? What do you guys think about this?
Well, as a former correctional officer that handled sex offenders, I really don't think that that's really going to do much. I mean, as you know, I worked with these with violent and sex offenders on parole through community corrections through STI Camp Hill in Pennsylvania back in 2009. So that was 10 years ago. I know a lot has changed, but just from what I've heard in the past, I don't know. I mean, I'm all for like permanent castration, not chemical castration. I don't know. I just heard that it doesn't really work.
It's permanent, though.
Huh?
Isn't the chemical castration permanent?
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't. I personally don't know too much about it because we don't do it here that I know of. But
convicted of a sex offense involving a person under the age of 13 will have to be chemically castrated a month ahead of release and will also be required to continue, quote, treatment until the court determines the treatment no longer necessary, unquote. Offenders would also have to pay for the procedure, but a denial of their parole could be based solely on an inability to pay. Huh.
Okay. Well, I know here in Pennsylvania, as far as sex offenders, when they're on parole, they go to they say a halfway house. It's not technically a halfway house. It's a lockdown facility, and the sex offenders aren't allowed to leave unless they go to, like, group therapy. But as far as them getting off parole, what has to happen is that they have to actually write, like, a diary and confess to everything they've ever done, and then they also have to take a lie detector test. So if they don't pass the lie detector test and, whoever reads the journal, like the parole board or whatever, it doesn't match up or whatever, or they just, aren't truthful, then they don't get off parole. But, there's always, you know what I mean? Like, there's always a slip up somewhere. And actually, one of the sex offenders that I dealt with, I can't remember his name, but he was a very violent offender who sexually abused his entire family, children, grandchildren, had kids with his own kids and all that. He actually threatened me a few months ago when I saw him in my city at McDonald's, of all places. And he said to me that he put a hit on me. And then all this other, all this stuff happened to me, after what he said. And then he also said to me that he can't be touched because he's an FBI informant now. And back like a couple years after he was maxed out on parole, they found him in another part of Pennsylvania, I believe it was Hanover, Pennsylvania, near the Maryland border, with a storage shed full of child pornography. So he did go back to jail, but now he's maxed out. And I did see him at McDonald's with a baby, and once they're maxed out, they can do whatever the fuck they want, unless, until they commit another sex offense. So I was a little, nervous being around the guy, and then he recognized me from like 10 years ago, and then said to me that he put a hit on me, and then he called the police on me. I called the police on him, and then the police actually kicked me out of McDonald's and told me that I couldn't be there when he was there. So, I don't know. It was really freaking weird.
Well, this is why they need the death penalty. I think we have Greg on the line. Let me see who this is. Hey, you're on the air. Who is this?
That's me. I'm here.
Hey, Greg. Wow. So this is our most, I love this. I'm curious to see how we're going to be able to juggle 4 people on the line here. This is fun. We got Greg Jr. on the line. Something kind of interesting about this chemical castration, and I'd like Greg's take on it. The chemical castration is defined in the law as, quote, the receiving of medication, including but not limited to medroxyprogesterone acetate, it's a mouthful, treatment or its chemical equivalent. And, I mean, acetate's a plastic as far as, I'm from the architecture world, so when I see acetate, I'm thinking about acetate transparencies and plastics and things like that. That, among other things, reduces, inhibits, or blocks the production of testosterone, hormones, or other chemicals in a person's body, according to AL.com. So, I mean, this also seems like, I mean, a sort of eugenics, move where it's very similar to the sodium fluoride that lowers immune systems, lowers IQ, sex drive, and things like that, which again, it's in my opinion, a half measure when it comes to those that sexually assault people under the age of 13. I think that they should have the death penalty.
I agree.
But could this be potentially something that maybe will, if this goes through and it's, what they could say is successful, will they start maybe using this treatment, chemical castration, for other people? And when's the first wrongful accused lawsuit? And I don't know, what do you think about this, Greg?
Yeah, I think you're right on point. I'm just making some notes, and I pretty much agree with that. It's going to set a bad standard. That's my fear. I don't know if that's really the answer, to the problem. I know it's very easy for me to sit here and say that because nothing like that. I haven't been through any of that personally. Had I been through it, maybe my view would be different. But I don't. I want to get to the root of the problem. I want to find out why these people are doing this stuff, and then try to fix that. So I'm not really in favor of the chemical castration, and I've never been in favor of the death penalty ever.
Okay. Well, and that's the beautiful thing about DarkDox Digest. We have people from, all perspectives, and we don't have talking points. We're not being controlled by some editor, so we're allowed to actually debate and discuss things, and not yell at each other because we disagree, which is fantastic. Someone on your side, according to this article, Randy Marshall, the executive director of the ACLU of Alabama, also noted that the law misses the mark in preventing child molestation. In a statement to CNN Tuesday, Marshall said, quote, "It certainly presents serious issues about involuntary medical treatment, informed consent, the right to privacy, of course, the Constitution's 8th Amendment, and cruel and unusual punishment, and it is a return, if you will, to the Dark Ages. This kind of punishment for crimes is something that has been around throughout history, but we've gotten more enlightened in criminal justice. We've gotten away from this kind of retribution."
Now, Christian, I was just going to interject as far as what Greg said, because as an incest rape survivor myself and a sex trafficking survivor, as far as like why people do what they do, I'm all interested in that as well. But 100% of people, pedophiles who sexually abuse children, especially young children, infants, newborn babies even, it's because they were sexually abused, which is no excuse. Because as a survivor, and I know tons and tons of people just like me, Fiona Barnett, Sarah Ruth Ashcraft, and stuff like that, we never went out and sexually molested other kids, even though we were abused. And yes, a majority, years ago, back in the 70s when I grew up, years ago they used to say it was only men, and now all over the news it's women sexually abusing, little boys, little girls, and stuff like that. It's just getting like out of hand. And as far as a lot of the stuff going on that's wrong with the world is, that's, as far as sex trafficking, is that it's a lucrative business. It's more lucrative than drug running, gun running, and it makes more money than Nike, CBS, NBC, like all the networks, NFL put together, because a child who's sex trafficked can be used over and over again. And it's not even just children, it's women, it's men. I met men on the streets back like 3 months ago when I was living on the streets due to domestic violence and I had nowhere to go. I met many men in their 30s who are still being sex trafficked, and they were sex trafficked. One of them was sex trafficked out of Sarasota, Florida, and brought to Pennsylvania where I reside, and he actually brought me to a pedophile's house. And of course, I didn't say who I was or anything. My whole plan was to basically, turn this guy in and everything. But then I was assaulted, as you know, and violently raped and kidnapped and all that stuff that happened, a few months back. But I just wanted to interject and say that as a survivor, I do believe in the death penalty, because these people will not stop. There's nothing, I don't, as far as Greg said, I don't agree with the chemical castration because I don't think it works. Progesterone was one of the ingredients you mentioned, which is, I believe, some kind of hormone. I believe somebody I knew was on that, but I'm not sure what all the other stuff mixed in with it. But as far as the sex offenders that I've dealt with, those people don't stop. I mean, they just keep going and going and going, and just, it's now. Christian, were you the one that I spoke to before about? You had mentioned something in my last radio show about Kevin Spacey, where you said that there was some kind of gene as far as pedophilia or something like that. Was that you or somebody else? I can't remember.
I said that, but frankly, that kind of dabbles too much into the eugenics movement, and I think it's bullshit. I definitely think you're spot on when it comes to just like how people are vaxxers, right? Like, oh, you need to get the vaccination so that way we kill this disease, which is total bullshit. That's not how human immune systems and biology works at all. But if you're going to make that argument, I think you can make an argument for this, that statistically most pedophiles are victims of sexual abuse under the age of 18, and then they lose that power, they lose their innocence, and then as an adult, they want to find that innocence again, kind of like Michael Jackson, which I totally think again was a beta sex kitten MK Ultra victim as a child, and then grew up. And then wanted to lay down with kids, and then now all of these adults are coming out and be like, nah, yeah, he wanted me to blow him and do anal and all kinds of stuff. And HBO is with the Leaving Neverland series is actually winning these lawsuits where the Michael Jackson estate is trying to sue them for defamation of character, and they're like, yeah, these allegations are pretty, they're all aligned with each other. They weren't really talking to each other. It kind of checks out. And the guy who introduced this bill about the castration, he had an interesting point. Republican Representative Steve Hurst, who put forward the bill, has emphatically defended the measure from accusations that it may be draconian or inhumane. Last week, Hirsch told WIAT, quote, I had people call me in the past when I introduced the bill saying don't you think it's not that it's inhumane? I asked them, what's more inhumane than when you take a little infant child and you sexually molest that infant child when the child cannot defend themselves or get away, and they have to go through all the things they have to go through. If you want to talk about inhumane, that's inhumane. And they have marked child for life, and the punishment should fit the crime. So he's pretty much saying a mark for a mark, or an eye for an eye, as it were. Whereas the way I see it, and I believe what you're trying to get at too, is that again, once you become a pedophile and you cross that line, and now you just another pedophile into existence, more than likely, you deserve, not to be walking amongst us, and the possibility to make it happen again, which creates another pedophile. People that, like Jeffrey Epstein and, all of these, like, pedophiles with a pedophile ring, human trafficking, we're talking about dozens and, if not hundreds of potential pedophiles in the future. I mean, that's more than, like, if we, like, breed, you have at most, 5, 6 kids, and that's kind of a lot. Usually people might have 1 or 2, maybe 3 kids, but when you're a pedophile, if you look at it in terms of breeding pedophiles, you have the potential to breed hundreds, like an insect, and that is an infestation. Can you imagine what our kids are going to be dealing with if we just let this grow out of control?
Yeah. And as far as, like, go ahead.
That's there. No, you go ahead. Yes, Amy?
No, I was just going to say that, like, as far as, like, when I was molested, it began at age 5, and that was in 1975. And I was sexually molested by my own half-brother, who was my dad's second, or son from his second marriage. My mom was his third wife. And I had come over from Tokyo, Japan to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and then later he brought over my half-brother, who I only met when I was a baby, so I didn't remember him. But he was a teenage boy. He was like 14, 15 when he started sexually molesting me, using pornography to groom me. And I had actually remember asking him, like, why he was doing this to me. I didn't really understand what he was doing, and he said it's because it was done to him. So, as you said, it's like a disease. It's an infestation. Like once, it touches somebody and that person doesn't have any kind of like family support or any kind of counseling or anything to deal with, the horrors that they went through themselves, they'll turn around and do it to somebody else. And I'm not saying always, but, in many cases, since we have pedophiles, millions and millions of them all over the world, obviously a lot of them do become child molesters. So, it's unpredictable. You just never know. And that's why it's so dangerous, and as far as like everything going on in the Vatican and all that and the Boy Scouts, Catholic Church, I mean, it's everywhere, and it's been like this. It's not like something new, you know what I mean? It's been going on since before, the biblical times and stuff. It's just I don't know. I mean, I guess I have a different point of view than some people that have never been sexually molested or raped as children. But I was, as you know, horrifically sexually abused by multiple people in my family, including both my parents and other people that they, had ties to in Hollywood because my father was a movie actor. And so, then you get into the whole Hollywood thing, MK Ultra, you get into like politicians and all that too, because my father also worked for the U.S. government, and he was an American in Tokyo that owned an import-export business. And, just from speaking to a lot of people lately and just sort of like getting back into therapy after I was assaulted violently, on numerous occasions the past few months, I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, I can only speculate why I was targeted, so violently over the last few months. But, I don't know. I just feel very strongly as a survivor, that there needs to be more done. So.
Absolutely. I honestly, when I hear about the stuff that you've gone through, you are an example of how resilient, and I would go as far as to say anti-fragile a human being can possibly be. I mean, you are like, Sarah Connor from the Terminator in my eyes. Like, you give us all hope. Anyone that gets triggered and, is like, very sensitive about everything, like, listen to, Emmy Frost's story and listen to our past episodes to really get the full scope of what a human being is capable of. Brendan O'Leary, what is your take on, this, because, of course, you come from a place of dealing, let's for our new listeners, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do for a living and what do you think is the answer to all this? How do we fix this?
Well, I'm a behavioral clinician, and I'm curious, like, as a state, when Alabama went to make this bill, why wouldn't they run a study to prove whether or not chemical castration changes somebody's behavior? I mean, can you just take away somebody's sex drive and that gets rid of their desire to hurt people? I mean, I don't understand. And if they did it and it proved it, then it would help their case. And if it didn't prove it, then it shows that it's a state that can make decisions upon upon their people medically, which is kind of crazy because it wasn't too long ago that they did have eugenic laws in Alabama and other states, and it's kind of sketchy. But yeah, I don't understand how they cannot push the fact that when pedophiles do what they do, they make more pedophiles, but then you can say that chemical castration is going to solve it, but you don't have any backing support that it changes the behaviors.
That's a very good point. And again, going back to the vaccine thing, I've been listening a lot. I suggest all of you guys, when you have a nice long commute, go on the Google Podcast app or just simply go to noagendashow.com because they've been covering, the whole vaccine thing, the whole Ebola thing going on. And again, they're pushing out these vaccines, the Gardasil vaccine and stuff, and under like the Vaccine Act or whatever, back from like the, I think like World War I or World War II, they don't have a requirement to do any kind of clinical trials for these vaccines. They simply just we are the guinea pigs. They market all this stuff to us as like, oh yeah, it's good for you, don't worry about it. CDC says it's fine, but the CDC has no requirement to test this. There are no papers on, anything that shows up as a possible side effect is really things that got reported after it was released after the fact. So this is another thing with these chemical castrations. These people are guinea pigs. They're just gonna, and they gotta flip the bill because they're a felon, shut up slave. And again, some of these people, of course, this is Alabama. It's very loose with the laws. Where pretty much someone is alleged to have done some of these things, and then you go to jail. And if you don't have the money for a decent lawyer, which I imagine happens very often, then you can't afford this, or however much it costs. This, who's making this chemical castration compound? Is it Bayer Pharmaceutical, the same people making? I'm curious to now see who is the manufacturer, who is distributing this stuff to Alabama, who benefits from this. So that's what I'm going to be looking into next.
No, we actually have a huge GlaxoSmithKline right by TMI, 3 Mile Island, which they just shut down. And I used to actually live down the street from there about 6-7 years ago in Lancaster. Well, actually, I'm not sure. I don't think it's Lancaster County, but I was right on the border of, it's Lancaster County and I believe it's Dauphin County. So yeah, I mean, it is scary. Because as far as the Gardasil, I had my daughter take that a bunch of years ago when it first came out, and luckily, she seems to be okay. But when I was pregnant with my daughter, they had me take Compazine, which is a medication for cancer patients for nausea during chemotherapy, and they told me that it was perfectly fine, that it was a new drug that they tested for morning sickness. So they ended up giving it to me, and I had horrible morning sickness the entire 9 months. And my daughter was born right after September 11th. And then when I read the warning or whatever on the label of the medication, it says that it can cause hyperactivity, ADHD, and all this other stuff. And my daughter just happens to have ADHD. And then I have adult ADHD, but I was considered hyperactive as a kid because back in the day they didn't do testing for that. There was no such thing as ADHD or ADD. And now I have major ADHD, but I can't take any medication for it, nor do I even want to because it's basically speed. But yeah, because I have a heart condition, so I can't even take it. But yeah, it's scary because when I was in Japan, they gave me the tuberculosis and the smallpox vaccine. And last year I got a job, doing hospice care, and they wanted a TB test, but I always test positive for TB for whatever weird reason. So now there's a blood test that you can take to find out whether or not you received the vaccine for tuberculosis or whether you were exposed to tuberculosis. And luckily it said, well, I don't know, I wouldn't say luckily, but it said that I had the vaccine in Japan basically in the 70s when it was prevalent, in Asian countries, mostly India. But yeah, I mean, I'm against vaccines. I haven't had a vaccine in eons. Because the last time I got really sick was when we had that swine flu thing, and that was 2009 or 2010. My entire household, the entire school, they had to shut down the schools and everything where my kids went. And then the next year I went and got the swine flu vaccine, and then I got severely sick. So I haven't had anything since then.
Resist the Grove, we never really talk about vaccines. Let's start with Greg. Are you a vaxxer, a semi-vaxxer, an anti-vaxxer? Where do you stand on all this?
I lean against them. I think there's probably some that are good, like maybe smallpox, polio, things like that. Some of the ones. I think what I've been doing is I've been looking back to the 80s. Like, I think a lot of the problem is that the vaccines probably aren't clean, and I'm just speculating here, but I think that a lot of the vaccines aren't clean. I don't know if they were clean back then. I don't understand why they're giving so many to people now, and some of the ones that they're giving to babies is just ridiculous. So based on that, say again.
And also pregnant moms.
Yeah, right.
Too.
So, I mean, based on that really made me think, you know what, this is not good. My worry is that the people who get them are going to infect the rest of us. They're like these carriers, and we're just, because I don't do it. I don't vaccine. I have no intention of doing that. But I was. I don't know if you would include the flu shot in this. I guess that's kind of different.
Yeah.
But I took the flu shot.
Injecting a live virus from a quote-unquote trusted source, which, again, you look at these trusted sources, Bayer Pharmaceutical used to be IG Farben, literal Nazis. You are injecting things into your bloodstream made by the new generation of eugenicist Nazis. I mean, it doesn't get too far than that,
Yeah, putting it like that just makes me even, less likely to ever take one. And I would say if people are, make sure that you understand what you're putting into your what is going into the vaccine shot. If you don't know it, don't take it. And if they won't tell you, then that's more reason just to not take it. If they make you sign waivers and all that stuff, that's also some more signs. But the fact that it goes back to Nazis, I think that's a pretty big one that probably gets overlooked a lot. Good to know.
Yeah, and you really just we made two very good points. If you're talking to a vaxxer and arguing on Facebook and all that stuff, that those are two good points that you just made that you probably didn't even realize. One, as a father, I have a 9-year-old, and when he was really little, we were going to the pediatrician, and they were like, "Oh yeah, he's due for this shot." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Let me get the insert," because at the time I was listening to Alex Jones and all that, and they were like, ask for the insert. And I found it really interesting doing this in real life. Don't get bullied when you're in that doctor's office, when you're in that examination room, and you look them straight in the eye, and you're like, "Oh, okay," before you do that. And like they're opening the syringe, like they're halfway grabbing your child's arm, and you're like, whoa, let me see the insert. And they're like, "What?" And you're like, "Yeah, the insert." It's like, and then they look at you, and then either they look at you like totally confused because no one asks for it, or they kind of give you that like, NPC Orange Man bad kind of smug face, and like, "Oh, you're one of those. You're one of those. You're a tinfoil." And literally, like this we stopped going to this pediatrician because he was like, he kind of rolled his eyes and like sauntered out of the office, and he, I saw him kind of in a closet of the doctor's office going through boxes for like a good 5 minutes. To finally, he gave me this like crumbled up piece of paper, and like, it's just, like it might as well have had like cobwebs on it. Oh, here's this thing. It was ridiculous, and it was long as hell. Like it was, Arial type fonts, like point, 0. It's so tiny. I have like 20/20 vision, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna next time we come,
magnifying glass.
There's a lot of big ass words in here that I've never heard of, so I need to Google a bunch of shit, So, and then after looking it up, it was terrifying, and the side effects were alarming. So yeah, we never went back, and he never got that shot. But yeah, you as a parent or an individual, like if you are sold on getting a flu shot or the Gardasil or any of these shots, ask for the insert and actually do your research. And just like HIPAA documents, no one actually reads the HIPAA documents when you go to.
Oh, I do.
Because why? It's like 50 pages long, and there's like 30 people in line behind you. They're like, yeah, just scroll to the bottom and sign. That's why I love about Ariel. When she went to go, she doesn't have insurance. And then she just got insurance, Obamacare, a couple of years ago for the first time. And so she never, her dad's a chiropractor, a lot of holistic medicine in the family. They knew a lot of general practitioners that were kind of like Eastern, Western hybrid medicine and stuff like that, where, food's the medicine, vitamins and minerals, good diet, exercise, and, chiropractic, acupuncture, and things like that. So when she got on Obamacare for the first time, she had to, she had to go get her ear cleaned because, like, it was all clogged up and her balance was off and it was giving her headaches and stuff. So, she just needed to, pretty much, they charge you $150 if you don't have insurance to go to the doctor's office, and then they pretty much get a, one of those little water pump squeegee things full of, like hydrogen peroxide water, essentially, which, by the way, I mean, I'm not a doctor, of course, but, like, every time I've been in rock bands since I was 13 years old, and I'm shoving, earplugs in my ears, and so I imagine she's probably, now that she's a punk rocker like me, we wear earplugs to protect our hearing because we're not idiots. But you're shoving earwax into your ears, so what you got to do, what I do. I'm not telling you to do anything. Look it up for yourself. I just buy hydrogen peroxide from Dollar Tree. It's $1 for a big thing of it, and you just fill the cap. You tilt your head, and you just pour that, and you'll hear the craziest sound you'll ever hear. It's like all of like the bubbling up of all the gross shit in your ear. Like let that count to 30 or whatever, and then tilt your head the other way and do the other ear while that ear drains, and then fill the cap with water, and then swish it with water, and then you don't even need to use Q-tips or anything. I finish it off with like a little bit of like external Q-tipping, but dude, I've never had to go to the doctor to get my ears cleaned. I've never had to do any of that stuff because I've been doing that since I was like, I don't know, like my mom taught me how to do that when I was 10. But like people are like, oh, I got to go to the doctor, or you go buy this like $20 kit from Walmart or whatever. When again, the thing costs $1 and you fill a cap full and it'll clean all that crap out of your ear. Anyways, do your research. Don't take my word for it. But I can tell you, I've been doing it my whole life. Never had to go to the doctor for that. But she went to, she was like, I don't know, I'm kind of skeptical. They were like, oh, it's gonna be $150 out of pocket, or you sign the HIPAA document. And, then your Obamacare, I think the copay was like $30. So she was actually sitting there reading the whole document right there, and the nurses were getting annoyed, like, are you seriously going to read this whole thing right here? And she's like, I don't sign anything without reading it, and my ear hurts. So, yeah, I'm going to sit here and read the whole fucking thing. And no shit, I would have never imagined, because, I'm a little complacent. I try to read as much as I can when it comes to the government documents and things like that. But, dude, there's so much to fucking go through. Terms and conditions on everything is ridiculous. All the legalese, you pretty much have to be a lawyer to understand it. But she found a paragraph that says that by signing this document, you are waiving your Fifth Amendment and some other amendment right to privacy, I think the Eighth Amendment, where now by signing this, all of the information in this document, your name, your social security number, your billing address, your birthday, your blood type, anything that is involved in that visit can be used for intelligence and counterintelligence. What the fuck does cleaning your ear have to do with national security? It's insane. I mean, why are these HIPAA documents having to do with intelligence and counterintelligence? What does the CIA have to do with medicine? I mean, it's insane. So this is why you got to read every little thing you sign these days, because you are literally signing your life away every time you do anything. Clean your fucking ear. Are you kidding me?
And you can do ear candling, or like one time I had an earache and I just used vinegar and hydrogen peroxide and did the same thing that you just talked about. and clear
There
it
you
right
go.
up. I didn't even have to go to the doctor.
Vinegar is good. What is that? Apple cider vinegar and stuff? Yeah, man.
Yep, apple cider vinegar.
Hunters, baby. Those guys have some crazy shit written on their products, but, you know, it's good stuff. Moving on, Business Insider. A prominent tech reporter was charged by the FBI in connection with attempting to solicit sex with minors, according to a report. Now, of course, if you have been on the DarkDox network, this is on Twitter. His name on Twitter is Dr. Pizza. That's right. Dr. Pizza is for child porn and soliciting sex with a minor, straight up pedophilia. Peter Bright covers Microsoft for ARS, as well as ARS, I think it's ARS, I never heard of it, as well as programming and software development, web technology and browsers, and security. Before coming to ARS, Peter worked with the British Library in the Digital Preservation Department. I wonder what kind of stuff he collected from there, working to recover and safeguard digital data. In his free time, Peter writes software and makes occasional contributions to open source projects. He also enjoys burritos and photography. I wonder what kind of photography. Peter lives and works in Brooklyn, New York. Here's some highlights. Here we go. Bright, who apparently no longer is employed by Ars Technica, is charged in connection with arranging to engage in sexual activity with a 7-year-old girl and a 9-year-old boy, according to the federal complaints. And they got a link. Everything we're talking about in this episode is, of course, on the Blog Talk Radio /Eternal Affairs radio page for this episode 24. All of the hyperlinks are there. Filed Friday, that was cited by Daily Dot. The complaint also said that Bright claimed to have molested an 11-year-old girl. Now, if you look at this guy's Twitter page, and we have a lot of print screens, Mark Fisher's been throwing down on the DarkDox network. Thank you, Mark Fisher. You should call in sometime. And, you know, there's really creepy stuff and a lot of, like, pizza-related, kind of innuendo-y kind of stuff on his post. So predominant tech reporter Peter Bright, age 38, was charged Friday in connection with soliciting sexual minors. Bright, who worked with tech blog Ars, is well-known in tech circles for his coverage of Microsoft. Bright was reportedly charged after meeting with an undercover agent who he believed to be the mother of 2 children he allegedly intended to molest. The complaint also said Bright had claimed to have molested an 11-year-old girl. Bright is currently being held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan without bail, according to the Department of Justice's federal inmate locator. Daily Dot states that Bright is no longer an employee of Ars Technica, which is owned by parent company of magazine publishers, did not respond to Business Insider's request for comments. And of course, they have a lot of people saying, I'm shocked by this, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm not. If you look, you know, we've, again, had a lot of different posts about this guy on social media. Do you guys, have you guys heard about this? Do you have any insights?
No, I've never heard about it.
The pictures of this guy are, they're ridiculous, these pictures. He's, like, standing in front of giant pizza slices, and then, like, you know, sex is like pizza, and there's like a cartoon picture of him underneath the rainbow and shit.
Oh, right, and I forgot to mention, he is the one on today's cover. Of course, every episode of Dark Digest has a special cover, and today's is an article that he wrote where he has a briefcase or maybe his laptop in front of him. He's smiling with his little business suit and his glasses, and he has a big bumper sticker in front of him that says, I love pizza. And the article is called, Is your kid porn literate? And it's interesting how that sentence has kid porn right there inside of it. And what I haven't read the article, but what does that, is your kid porn literate? Like, why are you talking about kids and porn in the same breath? And why are you questioning the literacy of children to pornography? So this guy's clearly a creep, and he's getting his. I'm really happy to hear about that. Before we go into any other articles, which we have a couple more to go through, I wanted to kind of jump back and forth. So here's a little segment jingle that I just came up with the other day. It's from Adult Swim Metalocalypse series, and of course we are still working on our film, which should be out probably around the Halloween time, exposing Pedo Swim, which is going to be talking about Adult Swim and all of its programming that is marketing sex to children and encouraging pedophilia. Specifically, you have Rick and Morty, which its genesis, Doc and Marty, is literally a cartoon porno, which is available at DarkDox, in case they pull the original and say, we never did that. Yeah, you did, and I downloaded Justin Roiland's entire gross Vimeo channel, and they also have fun gyms like 2 Girls in 1 Cup for PBS Kids. They have the logo and everything. We sent an email to PBS Kids, and they have not replied to us because we were like, hey, are you aware that the creator of Rick and Morty is using your logo for PBS Kids in a really creepy pornographic skit comedy show that has, like, I think 7 episodes. They're short. They're like 7 minutes long or so. And all kinds of gross, snuff stuff is in these really gross, transmissions. So keep an eye out for that. We have a trailer for the film currently at DarkDox.com. But before we go any further, Greg had some questions for Sacred Owls, and I have a couple of our songs queued up. I figured you could ask a couple questions, I could answer them, we'll play a song, and then we'll jump back into the media to kind of spice things up. Sound good with you, Greg?
Awesome. Sounds good. Your songs are, this is really, the content is what really grabbed me, because you have a certain style. I know it's not called punk rock, it's called rockabilly. Is that what it is?
Well, we draw a lot of influences from a lot of places. I listen to a good amount of rockabilly, what's called psychobilly, which is rockabilly mixed with more like hard-driven rock and roll. It's almost like if rockabilly and like Motorhead and more like hard, fast-driven rock and roll, kind of more mosh pitty, a little bit more punk rock, that would be, and then of course there's punkabilly as a genre, which is, quite obviously what it sounds like. And then there's thrashabilly, which is of course mixing very fast, like metal thrash kind of music with rockabilly, still having that kind of twang, using a stand-up bass. So, I listen to a lot of that different kind of stuff. I love surf. I'm a big fan of Dick Dale and a lot of old, surf stuff. So, we jokingly call ourselves sometimes political non-fiction punk slash rock psychobilly, but really it confuses everyone. We just like to say we're a rock and roll band, because if you say a rock band, people think oh, you guys are like Nickelback or something like that. So I like to say rock and roll because that sounds kind of like, more like Buddy Holly and the Crickets and that's not really far off from we're just a little bit more of a distortion-driven, kind of more punk rock oriented. I grew up listening to the Ramones. I love the band The Damned. I grew up listening to the Sex Pistols, and then in my teen years I got more into NoFX, and before I learned that they're a bunch of kind of liberal, lefty, Planned Parenthood supporting cucks and stuff like that. I love the Dead Kennedys. I met Jello Biafra before.
Them too.
Yeah, and he's an interesting kind of socialist guy, but we align and agree on a lot of things when it comes to false flags and corruption and freedom of information and things like that. I'm a big fan of Bad Religion, even though, I was like an anti-theist for a long time because, of course, growing up, I was involved with a lot of religious people that were, having sex with kids. And, I was never really, victimized myself as a child. I was molested in my sleep when I was 17 by one of my employers. Actually, I was working for a catering company, so I'm like what you call like a lightweight victim. I'm no Emmy Frost, I'll tell you that. But it's a spectrum of abuse. And, so I was really against all religion. I was what you would call an anti-theist for a long time. So a band like Bad Religion, that was like, their logo literally is like the Christian cross crossed out, is, it really spoke to me as an angry teenager. And now I work with a lot of Christians, and my sister and my brother's actually a pastor in Georgia, and, so I have a lot more acceptance for people that are theists. Of course, Greg is a devout Christian, and I respect that. And I think you're what I call like a good Christian. And ironically, my natural born name is Christian. I took Coffin's name because I was in a psychobilly band called Twisted Engraves, and I made coffin-shaped thumb drives for that band back in like 2008 or so. And so I got coined with Christian Coffins in that band. And it kind of stuck. It was catchy, so I created Coffin's Print Shop and all that. But yeah, that's a little bit of background on like the sound and like kind of the genesis of this character that is Christian Coffin.
So then, at what point did you start to actually make your own songs? When did you get to the point where you're like, hey, I need to, I'd like to try this? How did that happen?
When I was in 7th grade at Miami Springs Middle School, in South Florida, my mom had a rule. She had 5 kids, and she had a rule. Each kid had to learn a musical instrument. So my brother Dino was a drummer. In fact, he made it all the way up to the fife and drum corps band, that played in front of the White House back in the 80s. There's actually a bust of him in the Hall of Congress.
Wow.
My sister Tara played the piccolo and the flute. My sister Kim, she played the clarinet and became a vocalist, and actually very successful in the Miami area. She was on cruise ships, and she actually sang the national anthem a couple times for the Miami Heat. So we have and she's actually a descendant of the Von Trapps, which of course is the Sound of Music and all that. So we definitely have music in our blood, and I picked the trombone because I like the slide, and so I took 1 year of band, and I was learning the trombone, and I was like, this sucks. And I don't like being in the marching band. This is not my thing. I was kind of a rebel already, really into rock and roll. And Mr. Bennett at Miami Springs Middle, I really have to thank, because he had an acoustic guitar class. And so I was like, I want to learn guitar. I want to be in rock and roll. I want to write songs. And so I got, my mom got me my first Epiphone Les Paul. And I went into this class, and then I saw like that the class they're learning, just like basic kind of country stuff, and I was immediately bored and very disappointed. And Mr. Bennett could tell, and he was like, all right, you have 2 options. You can either learn this stuff, which I know you don't want to do, or we have a drum set, a guitar amp, and a bass amp, and a bass in the back. You could go with all the other, kind of bad kids, and your entire semester grade is going to be dependent on you guys with no help writing a song, an original song, and then performing it at lunch. If you guys fail, you fail. If you actually successfully play a song, no matter how bad it is, you pass the class. So it was a pass fail. It was the coolest thing I've ever heard of. And so we spent the semester, we were called Tits. And because it was the most offensive, stupid 7th grade thing that we could think of. And they ended up calling us TNT for the school function because they weren't going to write tits on like a school thing. And we played, it's funny, we actually played They Live, which was written by my buddy since 7th grade, Lance Craig, which is now a graphic designer out in L.A., and he wrote They Live and Take This Job and Shove It, which we renamed Fuck This Gig on Government-Sponsored Terrorism because we didn't want it to be confused with the Dead Kennedys cover of the country song Take This Job and Shove It. And so those songs are from 7th grade. We changed very little about them, and we, of course we passed. And that started. We were like, it felt good, playing in front of people. We jumped off the stage and crowd surfed, and that class ruined my life because now here I am, 35, and still playing in front of drunks.
And still playing the same type of music. It sounds like you've always been very conscious about what type of songs, because the content in your songs, like I said, I've been really inspired by it to just keep on going, to just not worry about what other people think, and just just make a good song. And so that's very interesting that you've always kind of had that thought. Did you put any thought into that? Like, I'm going to consciously make these songs, or did it just come natural to you?
It's funny because it's almost like a full circle kind of thing, because when I was in 7th grade, I was very angsty. I had a lot of aggression. I was very punk, and I was in Food Not Bombs, and skipping school, and Hialeah was right over the bridge from our middle school, so we could cross the bridge, and then over there they don't card you, so you could get cigarettes and beer and whatever you want as a kid, right across the street. So we were skipping school and doing all that, and being bad kids. And it's funny because meanwhile, I was, I was going to the free trade agreement of the Americas things a couple years later, and really seeing how corrupt politics were and how it was very complicated. I never really aligned myself with. There was a lot of communist and Marxist and that kind of thing going on, and I was like, that doesn't make sense to me either. I didn't know what libertarian was yet, and I just knew the Republicans and the Democrats are both lying to me, the media is lying to me, but I didn't have the proof, It wasn't really until 9/11 happened and I was in high school at that point. It was my 18th birthday. I was born 9/11/83. So 9/11/01 was my 18th birthday, and then that's when I saw this happen, and it was a funny thing because I was sick. I was in the hospital on the morning of 9/11. And I was sick with bronchitis, pneumonia, and the flu. All at the same time, my immune system dropped to 0. I passed out at a friend's party the night before, and so I was literally stuck in a hospital bed with IVs and stuff hooked to me, with a TV in front of me. So I watched everything happen in real time. I saw the BBC report where they said World Trade Center 7 fell due to fires on multiple floors, but the World Trade Center 7 building was in the frame behind the reporter, and I at that time was already in a dual enrollment program for architecture, and we studied the World Trade Center complex. So I'm like, no, WTC7 is right behind you. So it was a weird alignment of things where, of course, immediately I reached out to architects and engineers from 9/11 Truth, and then I got red pilled a lot, and then I was friends with Alex Hyde, which we founded FederalJack.com within a year of that. He was running a site called ResistanceArsenal.com, And he was actually my bass player in like an emo band. At that time, that was the thing. I was a club promoter, so I wasn't even really doing a lot of punk rock stuff anymore. I kind of got it out of my system. Me and Lance had a band called the Roonies, and that's, we kept going with They Live and Fuck This Gig or Take This Job and Shove It with that band, and we had a lot of more silly songs. My songs were always a little bit more kind of like dealing with like emotions and dealing with like conflict and things like that. But I really wasn't writing a lot of political stuff at all. I'd say if anything, Lance was writing way more political stuff than me. He's the one who introduced the movie They Live and stuff like that. And that film, when I saw it, it really just like hit me, and I was like, whoa, like John Carpenter's talking about some real shit here. And so it's funny, I really wasn't, I kind of got it out of my system, and then 9/11 happened, and then Alex Side's like, oh yeah, you got to listen to Alex Jones, you got to watch Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove, Terror Storm, and this was before Endgame came out. This was this was back when George W. Bush was still in office, and the Police State movies were coming out, so I was learning about all that, the Real ID Act, and then Clinton came through, Clinton was after Bush, right? That whole thing. It's all so fuzzy now, so long ago, But yeah, and then learning about Bohemian Grove, and then being introduced to like David Icke kind of stuff, and that was the founding of FederalJack.com, and then we became a student organization at Florida International University that we all ended up going to after we graduated, and we were actually a university-funded open source intelligence agency. That we were just like William Cooper and his whole I think they were called like Kashi or something like that. But yeah, like we had a war room of we started with about like 4 or 5 of us, and at our high point we had about like 40, 50 people, all of us on our laptops, writing articles, and we were like a real operation, and we were, confronting politicians. I interviewed Ralph Nader about fluoridation of water, 9/11. I confronted Francis Fukuyama and Robert Keegan, both members of Project for a New American Century, about how we need a new Pearl Harbor a new catalytic event in order to gather public support for a new war to go into Iraq, and all of that. Then so this was I graduated in 2002 from high school. So like in 2004. 9/11 just happened not too long ago, and now you have these neoconservative globalists having geopolitical summits at our university, and I got detained by Secret Service at a John McCain rally at FIU, because I was passing out flyers that I designed that had Obama and McCain's face, kind of put together. The red parts were McCain and the blue parts were Obama, but they made one face. And I was like, 2 parties, 1 lie, don't be fooled again. We had a website called WriteItIn2008.com, where it was an informational resource about Ron Paul, Dennis Kucinich, Cynthia McKinney running for the Green Party. That's when I met Cynthia McKinney. She actually came to Sweat Records in Miami, and we talked and stuff. And then I actually came out that year to a 9/11 protest, met Luke Rudowski and We Have Change, those guys. So, I mean, it was just this amazing snowball of just one event after another. And I wasn't doing music at all at this point. I was just info warring and stuff. And for about 4 or 5 years, I wasn't doing any music. And then I really started to kind of get the itch after a couple years of doing movie screenings, Q&As, lectures, symposia, things like that, that I was like, this message, this whole world of information needs to make its way to entertainment in a different way. So I came up with the name Vowels. It just kind of like into me. It was like, of course, that's what that was just going to be called. And 11 years ago, this 4th of July, we had our first show where I got one of my old drummers, which he actually, wants nothing to do with the project. He was the first. I'm not even going to name him because he literally sent a cease and desist because I was using his name on the website. And I was like, whatever, dude. I thought you'd want the credit. We're an international touring band now with a big discography. And what are you up to? Oh yeah, you're still making fucking wedding videos. Okay, whatever. So I was just playing that. And, but yeah, 11 years ago on the 4th of July, we played Churchill's Pub in Miami, and I declared independence of the World Order on stage at the beginning of our set. And that was our mission statement, that we are the new founding fathers of the anti-New World Order movement, because frankly, I'm, just like you guys, I'm very weary of joining anything else. And I don't really even consider myself a leader because I want other people, to do what they see fit, and I'm happy to be an ally. I love being a part of Resist the Grove. I love, working with Eternal Affairs Media, and we're meeting so many amazing people doing all these things, and it's been really a tough struggle. But yeah, because these punk rockers, I'm sorry to say, they're soft, and they're, what punk rock is it's anti-establishmentarianism when there's a corrupt government. And that's exactly what we've had, in my opinion, at least since JFK, probably before that. We have these sick, pedophile, scumbag, spy, disgusting people with their secret societies and their robes and their human sacrifices. It's fucking disgusting. But what are punk rockers talking about? I don't like Trump. I love Obama. I'm a socialist. I'm transgender. And that's that's all that any of them are talking about. And when I show up with my projector and the TV and the drum set, red pilling the fuck out of them. Which, by the way, red pill is Republican. Red pill is the Matrix. You either are in the Matrix and you're taking the blue pill and you're living the life of illusion and you're listening to the mainstream media controlled by the New World Order, or you're listening to alternative media and you're doing research and investigating yourself. You're a critical thinking person, and you don't just take things at face value. You investigate. You're actually using your brain to decide for yourself what's really happening. And no one can debate me on any of this stuff. I have people, Sacred Owls now, now that we're getting a little bit more exposure, we have been banned from 3 different venues in New Orleans because we are quote-unquote alt-right conspiracy theorists that are pro-Pizzagate. And that is the term they're using for us. Now, when you say pro-Pizzagate, that's confusing to people because they're like, wait, are you telling me that you're pro-pedophile? Because that's what that sounds like. And again, people don't research anything, so they're like, oh, yeah, a Secret House band, they're pro-pedophile. Never heard our music, never, read our lyrics, never watched our videos, which it's all social media. And, we get thousands of hits, yet it says, our videos have 2, 3, 4 hits. But it's I've watched them personally from multiple devices more by myself than the hits that they're saying we're getting. And of course, Eternal Affairs Media did a whole marathon, a 7-day marathon where we were live streaming on Facebook, and it would show us that at times we had 20, 30 people watching at a time, and we had more comments than hits on the video. How do you have more comments than hits? Doesn't make any sense. So we are being suppressed. These people running these social media platforms and Silicon Valley tech companies are suppressing us to make us look like we are smaller than we are actually, the things that we're actually accomplishing. And that's why this is information warfare. That's why we know that we're doing the right thing and we're winning. And we're on the right side of history, because they're just simply they're lying to everyone by saying that we're less than we are. It's it's a small. This is the ground floor of Sacred Owls. 11 years in, because it takes so long for people to wake up from their programming. We sold a shirt and a button last night at our show at Uncle Lou's in Orlando, and that is a success because these punks they're more interested in getting drunk and spending $40, $60 at the bar, and cocaine and bag of weed, than actually supporting things that are educational and people that are just looking out for their best interest. But I like your band. You guys are cool. You guys rock. And it's hard, man. But I feel like the kids in high school right now. By the time they're in college, I think that's when we're going to really start seeing people. We're now in the public eye enough, and that we've been around like Alex Jones to be where. Predictions that we've made, which aren't predictions, they're just research that's kind of clandestine and now being talked about in the mainstream media. They're going to be like, fuck, Sacred Owls was right about that. Pizzagate is going to come out as, okay, so Pizzagate really happened. Okay, Pedogate really happened. Okay, Jeffrey Epstein was involved with the Clintons and all that. Okay, the Bohemian Grove does exist. And, they don't have a leg to stand on anymore. I have people telling me that, there's nothing wrong with Spirit Cooking and Marina Abramovich and all that shit. It's just art, man. Don't be a fucking fascist. Meanwhile, they're banning us and blacklisting us from using our free speech. So that's very hypocritical of all of you lefties out there, and frankly, I'm very disappointed in the right wing, too, because you guys are supposed to be the Hannity, InfoWars, whatever. I messaged every single Proud Boys chapter all over the U.S. that in every city of 25 states across the U.S. this July. It's like, hey guys, just to let you know, it seems that we agree on a lot of issues. You guys should come out. I got an email back from one chapter. In 2 months, I got an email back from one chapter, and they were actually like, oh, fuck yeah, you guys seem awesome. Yeah, we're totally going to go to your show. We're going to bring out some people. So now we get to interview some Proud Boys that are into what we're doing, which is fantastic. When we're in Austin, we're going to stop at the studio and see if they're willing to talk to us, or else they're going to kick us out. It's going to be really interesting because we've been sending them CDs and T-shirts and stuff since we've been around, and we've never heard anything back from them before. So I'm curious about this. You step up to the plate because we're the only ones actually doing this. There are no other bands that are InfoWar bands, period. And if you want to prove me wrong, please send me one. Now, of course, there's a lot of hip-hop artists. We're talking to this one guy called Homage out of Reno, Nevada, which is probably going to be jumping on our LA show, and he's going to try to go out to the Grove also, so you might be meeting him. He has a song about chemtrails on YouTube, and of course YouTube put the contrail thing with Encyclopedia Britannica underneath it and stuff. He's throwing the fuck down. It's really good stuff. He's going to be on the DarkDox network, and we're releasing his CD from coffinscollective.com as well. So, things are really looking up. Yeah, so Dealer Stray, Brendan, you pick a song.
Weaving Spiders.
You got it. This is Weaving Spiders off of Government-Sponsored Terrorism from Sacred Owls.
With this ceremony called the Cremation of Care, that begins the 2-week encampment where the body of dull care, symbolizing woes and concerns, is burned on an altar in front of a big owl statue. When that ceremony ends, they all start to cheer and yell.
doing this. I hope we can actually. The next episode you're on, Greg. Of course, you are a musician as well, and you do some truth music. I want you to go ahead and email me your MP3s or WAV files. So I can queue them up, and I'd like to return this favor because this is super fun. It's kind of like a memory lane thing for me. I want to ask you a couple questions and play some of your tracks next time. It's great. It gives me a chance to go get another cold drink, and I poured myself some soup to eat for the next time. This is fantastic. So we're gonna jump back into media deconstruction, and then we'll talk some more and play some more music. This is from medicalkidnap.com. It's a really interesting website that was shared with us on the DarkDox network. Breastfed home-birthed babies taken away from parents for not using hospital. Now, of course, those of you that want to be a natural human being and have a home birth, or maybe give a wet birth, which is when you do it in a bathtub or an inflatable tub. And I've seen videos, and it's a really beautiful thing. Your baby to be naturally born in your house with no anesthesia. And, it's just, what I mean, if you are physically able to just be a natural human being and be able to give birth the way we've been doing for a millennia, why not have the right to do that? Well, apparently, some government agencies like the Child Protective Services have a problem with that. Now, this article, it's pretty dense. There's a lot of updates, so there's a lot of it's kind of hard to read it chronologically. But here's a couple of notes. The political pressure being exerted by an outraged public is very obviously reverberating from the governor's office on down. The state wrapped up with 20 minutes trying at the close of their arguments to introduce new exhibits showing medical problems with one of the babies. The only problem was that the diagnosis for pneumonia, ear infection, and reflux were well after the babies had been removed from their breastfeeding mother. So again, you're getting colostrum and all kinds of, good stuff from breast milk, and they're trying to say, they have social workers coming in, taking the children away from their breastfeeding mom, which then they stop producing because they're not pumping, and your immune system is so vulnerable as a baby, and to take that away, it's no wonder that and then they're trying to say the baby has all these things because it's being breastfed and it was born at home. Totally absurd. The state fumbled with the defense objecting that the haphazard manner in which the state introduced those documents, the state realizing its mistake withdrew one of the documents and moved on. At that point, the defense team proceeded to systematically disassemble the state's premise. The family argues there are, quote, mental health issues in the home, and the parents weren't adequately using the rash cream. So again, they're saying, because you're not using these products that we told you to use. I just can't believe that we're at this point where natural human beings that are just exercising their right of procreation are being stomped on by CPS here. How do you guys feel about all this?
Well, as a mom of 5 children, and I breastfed 4 of my children, oh my God. Because I was actually going to bring this up earlier when we were talking about the anti-vax stuff, too. Shoot, now I'm losing my train of thought. But no, I breastfed 4 out of my 5 kids, and, I know what I was going to say. Now they're having women who are against vaccination having their kids taken away because they're not wanting vaccinations for their kids. And they're putting these moms in jail because they don't want to vaccinate their children. And, back in the day, my first child was born in the 80s, and then the second one was born in 1990. I didn't know. I was a teenage mother. And I had 2 kids as a teenager, so I didn't know. I mean, I just went along with, like as you said, when you brought your daughter to the pediatrician's office, it's like I didn't investigate anything. It was just like we just went in there and got the vaccinations and left. But, nowadays babies are having like up to 20 some odd vaccinations. And back when my son was a baby in the 90s, I mean, I don't remember how many, but maybe it was like 10 or 12. Now it's like double the amount. And these kids are getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And now there was an article I just saw today where like there's another like mumps outbreak. There's been measles outbreaks and stuff. And back when I lived in Japan in the late 60s, early 70s, I actually had measles, mumps, and rubella. But when I came over to the United States in 1975, I was vaccinated for things that I already had. Like I actually had the diseases. And then at one point I worked in the healthcare field. And in order to work for a hospital, you have to have all those vaccinations again. And I didn't even think about it until I think it was like 2007. They wanted me to get another MMR shot for vaccination, which is measles, mumps, and rubella, but they actually tested me because I said, well, I already had this disease as a child. Like, why do I need to be vaccinated for something that I already had? And so they tested me and said, yeah, you actually had the diseases, but, in order to get this job, you have to have the vaccination. So, I was at a point in my life where I needed the job, so I got the vaccination, and now, I'm suffering from systemic lupus erythematosus, Sjogren's syndrome. I have like 3 different autoimmune disorders that people have never heard of, like chronic fatigue immune dysfunction syndrome, in which my cousin actually died from that disease back like maybe 10, 11 years ago, and she was actually my 2nd or 3rd cousin, but still, I mean, we don't know exactly where it all came from, but I more and more people are coming down with autism. I mean, I have multiple children on the autism spectrum. Now 5 years ago they said I'm on the autism spectrum. And so, a lot of people have gotten into huge debates and fights and lost friends over, arguing on Facebook as to whether vaccinations cause autism or not or whatever. So, and when I was breastfeeding my children, I breastfed all of them until they were 2 years old, and I got shit for it everywhere I went. It's not like I just whipped my boob out and started breastfeeding them in public with nothing, I mean, I was covered myself and stuff, but that's the most natural thing that a woman can do.
Yeah, I'm totally for it, and I'm not like trying to look at boobs, but like I think a mom has absolutely every right to breastfeed in public, and I think you're a creep if you make a big deal about it. Like, it's her private business, and those kids are hungry all the time. And if we were, again, we're animals. We're out here and we act like, oh, we're civilized. We wear clothes and drive cars, so therefore we're above it all. Like, you were a baby at one point. We were all babies at one point, and a baby's natural food is breast milk until they start eating solid food. That's just the way we're made, and kids are hungry all the time. So if they start going for a boob, I don't care where you are. It's fine. You don't have to look at them, And I think it's very, very respectful of moms to, put a little blanket or whatever over it. But I don't feel like they have to. I think it's ridiculous. Kids can walk around with
for the last 25 blah 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 years. When you go to the mall, they have like breastfeeding stations in the bathroom, and I'm like, well, why do I have to breastfeed in the bathroom? I don't eat in the bathroom. Why does my baby have to eat in the bathroom?
A little bit more private, and they feel embarrassed. I get that, There's different cultures, I think it's a nice thing to offer, but I don't think it should be a requirement. Yeah.
But there's so many weirdos out there, though. That's what I'd be worried about.
True. Well, yeah, it was a different time when I was breastfeeding because my last child was born in 2001, so that's almost 18 years ago. But, yeah, I mean, I guess I have a different perspective because I'm a woman, so.
I honestly think, and, Ariel and I talk about this all the time, like, it's ridiculous that if she wants to walk around with no shirt on, like, we've made a stigma out of women's breasts. Guys can walk, after a show, like after I play a show and I'm sweaty and I'm hot, my shirt is soaked with sweat. When I'm packing things up and I'll take my shirt off and the door of my van while I'm gear, and then I'll go get a nice, I'll kind of put some ice on my body, and then I'll put on a shirt, and I love the fact that I'm not worried about, oh, you can see my breast, and I honestly think we can move forward as a civilization, and if women can do the same thing, a woman's, running or, doing a sport or just hanging out at the beach, I think toplessness, I think the real private parts of course, like genitals, like, your ass and vaginas and dicks and stuff, maybe that's a little bit more private, but I think everything above the waist is above the waist. Everything below the waist is a little bit more, private. What do you think, Brendan?
I think it's crazy that the state can take away your kids if you have them at your home. You birth them at your house. It's the most humanizing thing you could do, just having kids and breastfeeding them. It's natural, and then you dehumanize them because you take them away, and then you put a big social stigma on them, and it's headlines. But the arguments in the state's like saying, no, that ain't cool. That's not natural. You have to follow our steps and our guidelines, and I think that's fucking ridiculous.
I'll tell you what it's really about, and this is the most recent update on this case, medicalkidnap.com. This is from June 16th, 2019. Just wait, that's from today. Wow. Okay.
What?
So yeah, wow. So they're on this. This is like
what day it is.
Okay,
we're current.
Medical kidnapped children of Washington parents still not returned. CPS wants them adopted. It's human trafficking. They are making money off of these children, either for, put them into sex slavery, sell them for God knows what, including that, or they want to kill this baby and use it for adrenochrome or, stem cell research or any of those things. Here's where we're at. 3 breastfed home birth babies who were taken away from their parents by Child Protective Services in Washington State more than a year ago are still not home. But their mother reports that she is very hopeful that they will be home soon. The story of Erica May Carey and Cleve Ringo's children being taken away by CPS was first reported by Health Impact News in November of 2014. Their heartbreaking story went viral and was read by more than 1.5 million people in less than 48 hours, leading to national outcry. The governor of Washington reportedly received 6,000 phone calls after the story was published. So I'm glad that there's so many people like us that actually give a crap about this family's tragedy. So I mean that they still aren't in the custody of their parents since 2014, and this is what happens with the bureaucracy of this case. Meanwhile, I can almost guarantee you that in these past we're going on 5 years now that these children have already been sexually molested. I mean, the odds of it in these group homes and all kinds of things. The people that get jobs working for this stuff and CPS, I'm sure they've already had people that want to adopt these kids for nefarious purposes have already had unsupervised visits with these kids doing God knows what. So this is something that we really need to keep on. And this is a breaking story. So we'll keep an eye on that. Moving forward, let's see. I'm going to do a couple more, and then we'll jump back into music mode because we have 24 minutes on this broadcast. At this point, I also would like to say, please help support the network, and you can make a donation to Eternal Affairs Media. And DarkDox.com, we split all the money. So if you just make a donation to info@darkdox.com, we'll split it with Eternal Affairs Media. You can also paypal.me/Sacred Owls, and also, I'd like to throw Emmy some help too, and definitely subscribe to her while she's on social media. She's being deplatformed as we speak as well, and she could really use your help as well. So I'll actually be posting some links to that, and we're glad to have you on. From Patch.com. Yeah, you're a treasure to us. Patch.com, Homeland Security charges Tampa man with sex trafficking of minors. Louis Trinidad was arrested June 7th on a criminal complaint charging him with the human trafficking of minors. They got a book and image of this guy. He looks scared. Tampa, Florida, 29-year-old Tampa man has been arrested on federal human trafficking charges. Of the 2300 block of West Waters Avenue, arrested on June 7th on a criminal complaint charging him with human trafficking of minors. The convicted Barros Trinidad faces a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years up to life in federal prison. I can guarantee you that all good behavior is going to be dropped to like a year or two, like a lot of other cases that's going on right now. But to be fair, I really like that. We're getting a lot of arrests, in these past couple months. Mm-hmm. So, it's I'm seeing more and more arrests happening, so it's setting a lot of legal precedent, and I hope they're running scared, and that might have something to do with all of these people tied to the Clintons dropping like flies. Of course, Dan Hennon of Eternal Affairs Media, he covered the Cappy situation and some of these really unusual deaths within 48 hours tied to the Clintons. Here's one of them. This is from NewYorkTimes.com. Alan B. Kruger, economic aide to Clinton and Obama, is dead at 58. Alan B. Kruger. Are you kidding me? New York Times, man, you can't even read an article without logging in these days. They just want your money. That's why, again, supporting us, we're going to give it to you for free, whether you support us or not. But, we can only do it with your support. So, if you guys can, whatever you think that these broadcasts are worth to you, definitely, consider making a donation or buying a DVD or a T-shirt or any of that stuff. It really helps us out. And on that note, we'll do one more news segment after Greg. I know you have a couple more questions, but I think we can fit in another song or two. So I'll let you take this segment here.
Yeah, so one of the biggest questions that I have that I've always wanted to ask you is, out of all of the songs that you've made, what is your favorite song?
I always have a hard time saying I have a favorite anything. I mean, of mine, I don't know. That feels weird.
Okay, let me put it like this: if you had a chance, let's say you had a chance to show somebody one song, what song would you choose?
Okay, all right. We have a press kit, kind of a EPK, as it were, that we give out to venues when we're trying to book shows. And when government-sponsored terrorism came out, well, actually before that was the Burning in Hell EP, and New Day Rising was the softer, more like rockabilly version of government-sponsored terrorism's New Day Rising, without the apostrophe. We kind of made it a little harder, but still, kind of a rockabilly tune. So that was definitely one of those. And then we were also pushing "Rid Yourself of the Care" was like the kind of like all-encompassing manifesto song, and then "Sacred Owls" was like the intro song to like the newly formed Sacred Owls with Ariel Burial. Now, since we've released Tales of Terror, we usually market with Owlmobile, because it's a song about our van, and it's kind of, it touches on our mission statement and our goals as far as hunting down criminal, predatory pricks, flying down the highway, gives me my kicks, music fucking blasting, my feet are made of bricks. It's kind of like, a go-getter thing, but it's a little bit more marketable than, of course, the main purpose why we put out Tales of Terror, which was Conspiracy of Silence, which is a song about Paul Benassi and Chapter 1 of the Franklin cover-up, and, of course, the unfinished Discovery Channel documentary Conspiracy of Silence. And we literally didn't add much as far as the comic book was concerned. We just got a couple of photographs, the milk carton photos, the photos of him, and I believe it was Troy Boner tied up with rags over their mouths and things in these hotel rooms in Sacramento. And in his story about how he was taken from the Sacramento airport with 2 white limos going into the mountains an hour west into these redwood forests where men in robes were doing these mock human sacrifices. So of course this is coming from a 14-year-old boy back in 1988. This is before Google. This was before the Alex Jones movie and all that stuff. So there was no way in hell that this Paul Benassi, as a teenager, would, from Boys Town, Nebraska, would know about Lawrence King and Hunter S. Thompson shooting the snuff film, and David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger and the Bohemian Grove. And that's really what really, to me, was a smoking gun that this is all true. All of these allegations made by him and his friends that was silenced by the FBI were legitimate. And, now he's, I'd imagine, in some sort of witness protection program.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd say, that's, the gambit of, I guess, top marketable songs from our last couple releases. Which one would you like to hear next?
Do you have the Death Wish song?
Ooh, that was a surprise one. I didn't cue that up because it didn't really have to do, because of course, we have songs that are like nonfiction, and then we have songs that are fiction, about the movies that we like because we like the message. Of course, Death Wish is about the Charles Bronson 5-part movie anthology about an architect, ironically, that he suffered from his wife and daughter being raped and murdered.
Mm-hmm.
His wife and daughter that get raped and murdered, and it's like every movie he suffers this terrible thing, and in every movie he has to stop what he's doing with his nice peaceful life and become a vigilante and just shoot these guys down. So I mean, that was actually the Death Wish was really the first Sacred Owl song of so when we wrote Burnin' in Hell, that was back in Miami back in 2008, and then I took a break from all of that, and, right after our first show, really. We had our first show, and then, my ex-wife, Jenny, I was dating her at the time, we decided we wanted to get married. I was moving up to Orlando. We had Gabriel, and that was 9 years ago now. And so for about 2 years when I moved up here, I didn't know anybody. I got a new job, and I wasn't doing any music. But then I saw those Death Wish movies, and I was at work. I was a graphic designer, and when I saw those Death Wish movies, that song, those lyrics just poured out of me, and I just, in my head, I knew what the chords would be like. I ran home, and I put this demo together for Death Wish. And that was the very first second wave Sacred Owl song. So we'll play that on the next episode. I used it as an intro a bunch of episodes ago, but pick another one.
Charlie Boy is shooting like an ace. How about the Owl Mobile? Do you have that one up?
I do. This is Owl Mobile off of Tales of Terror #1.
Liberty Bell.
inside joke in there. When Ariel sings in the second verse, it doesn't say scared owls, learn how to spell. You would not, because we have, a little spray-painted logo of Sacred Owls with the owl buster on the side of the van. And I don't know, our theory is that, most people are more dyslexic than they know. There's more dyslexic people than, you would imagine. And I also have a theory from a marketing standpoint that because we used red spray paint, and it's actually the Friday the 13th font that we used, that I cut the stencil out of, and the fact that it's drippy, kind of like blood. It's a scary looking van, first of all, but a scary looking logo. So I think that, it being, that's scary, and then they just read Scared Owls. And so people are like, you scared owls? Yeah, you guys called Scared Owls? And it's like, it doesn't say Scared Owls. Learn how to spell. And she said that, and we were laughing like that has to be the lyric. That's hilarious.
That's great. That's great. I love those stories. I love all the behind-the-scenes stuff.
So we got two more little news items that I want to cover and get your opinions on, and then I think we have time for one more song. And so we got from WPRI.com, traffic stop leads to unexpected human trafficking sting in Seekonk, Massachusetts.
Seekonk, Massachusetts. I used to live right next to there. That's where my ex was a police officer.
Oh, well, sure. Let me read a couple sentences, and I'll let you take over this one. What was supposed to be a simple traffic stop led to an arrest after police found items indicative of human trafficking inside the driver's vehicle. An officer from a canine unit pulled over Adam Sampson, 28, of Connecticut, due to minor traffic violations on Highland Avenue in Seekonk near the Quality Inn Monday morning. Police said the canine alerted the officer there were drugs inside the car. The officer found heroin and fentanyl during the initial search of Sampson's vehicle. As he continued the search, police said the officer began finding things that became concerning. Quote, some things that are indicative of people who might be in the business of trafficking females for prostitution, Captain Matthew Jardine said. When the officer asked Sampson about the items, police said the answers he provided were inconsistent. Police said Sampson didn't provide any good reasons to be in town. The officer then learned Sampson was staying at the nearby Quality Inn. Police searched 2 rooms at the motel and found a variety of drugs and 3 women in their late 20s and early 30s. According to police, the women were addicted to drugs, and Sampson was taking advantage of that. Do you have any insight on this case? Or,
yes, I do. Well, okay, it's pronounced Seekonk, Massachusetts, which is right by Providence, Rhode Island, actually. It's basically like right on the border of Providence. So it's easy to get to, over the border to another state. And I did read the article. I actually posted it on my Facebook like yesterday or the day before. So I actually went to graduate school in Seekonk. I went to Anna Maria College and studied criminal justice, and they had a satellite campus at Seekonk High School. And so it was a hop, skip, and a jump away from Taunton, where my ex-husband was a police officer for 7 years, from 1998 until 2005, and then that's when he got a job with the NSA. But that's a whole other story. But as far as the sex trafficking, I was actually sex trafficked, and they do use hotels. And I'm not sure if I told you that recently I heard a murder in the room next to me when I was staying at the Red Roof Inn in York City, Pennsylvania. And I happened to be hiding out from the people that attacked me, these blood gang members, and they were from Baltimore City, Brooklyn, New York, as well as Queens, New York, and San Francisco, California. So what they do is they, as far as what you said about the story that this guy was taking advantage of these drug addicts, Well, a lot of them are drug addicts as far as women that are sex trafficked, but they also drug them, to get them to do what they want them to do. So, yeah, I mean, this this guy's going to be in a lot of trouble. But as you said, they're getting like a slap on the wrist. I mean, they're supposed to be facing federal prison time for life. And as far as President Trump and the executive order that he enacted in April 2017, as far as like shutting down Backpage, Craigslist, and all that, and then he said that if you convict a sex offender, then the victims are supposed to get all their assets. But human sex trafficking is such a big business that you don't really know like who's running, who's like the head of it, because it's probably like millions and millions of different people, and it all has to do with drugs. It has to do with all kinds of different things. So as far as fentanyl, they do use that for sex trafficking, as well as heroin, crack, methamphetamines. And when I was at the Red Roof in New York City on the corner of North and South George Street, I was there in room 221, I believe, hiding out with a friend. Well, actually, I met this guy whose cousin was staying there from Maryland, so he let me stay there for a couple of nights. And at 5:30 in the morning, I was watching TV. I couldn't sleep. I was scared for my life. I had been, sexually assaulted and, attacked numerous times. And I heard a pop at 5:30 in the morning, which almost sounded like somebody took a water bottle and threw it at the wall. And there was a door that was like adjoining to the next room, but in front of the door there was like a desk and then like a microwave. So I guess the door wasn't like a working door, or maybe, you know what I mean? And so, I was like, did you hear that? But the guy that was in the room had like headphones on, and he was like asleep. So I woke him up. I said, did you hear that? And he said, no. He said, go back to sleep. And I was like, well, I can't sleep because I don't know what that sound was. And then when I woke up later, I came out of the room at like a little bit before noon, and there was 2 ambulances from Spring Grove, Pennsylvania, which is not, it's still York County, but it's not like from the city. So I thought that was odd. And then there was like EMTs or paramedics like bringing stretchers up to my floor. Then all of a sudden I saw a female coroner as well as a man in a suit with a clipboard behind her. And then all of a sudden there was cops. And then all of a sudden there was like feds. And so they said we had to leave, and I was like, well, I told the owner of the hotel I heard something weird in the middle of the night, or actually at 5:30 in the morning, and he was like, well, a lady got shot. And I was like, oh, and then he's like, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you call the police? I was like, well, I didn't know what the sound was. I mean, it almost sounded like it was muffled. But anyway, as far as the sex trafficking, I mean, there's hotels all over the place where I used to live, and there's been murders. There was a prostitute that was like stabbed to death or something a few years ago. There was a man that took 2 women into the Red Roof Inn, but it used to be called the Roadway Inn or something like that, and he was murdered by 2 women who were prostitutes, and they robbed him, and I guess they strangled him to death with something. So yeah, I mean, this type of thing is prevalent like everywhere. I mean, I don't care if you're living in some bumfuck town in the middle of fucking, some friggin', down south, or it could be in Maine, it could be in like North Dakota, it could be, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's Cape Cod where I grew up. It's there too. I mean, it's just becoming like an epidemic.
Right.
And it's scary because now they're going after kids. Like my daughter was almost kidnapped a year ago in Maryland. She was walking home from school. She got off the school bus. She was in 10th grade, and she looks like she's like 14. She looks really young for her age. And a guy came up to her and said, "Oh, do you have a boyfriend?" And I always told her, "Do not talk to anybody." And she had like headphones on, and I said, "Don't ever wear headphones walking down the street." So she just got off the bus. She was crossing a parking lot to get, back home. A guy pulled up in a car and was like, "Do you have a boyfriend? You want to ride? I'll give you $20 if you get in my car." She said no. And then he said, "What about $100? So she started videotaping him. So I was proud of my daughter, and she got his plate number, called 911, and she was scared for her life. I mean, she was, because I've always talked to her about stuff that happened to me. I've talked to all my kids. I've told them everything, that I went through as a child, just so they understand, like, this is, like, real. I mean, this happens to, a lot of women and men, too, when they were little or whatever. So, as far as Seekonk's kind of a not nice area. And as I said, it's next to Providence, Rhode Island. It's right on the border. There's also a town called Rehoboth, which is like it's Seekonk, Rehoboth, and Taunton. And Taunton is a city which the square mileage is bigger than Boston. And Taunton, where my ex-husband was a police officer, was one of the most corrupt police departments in the state of Massachusetts, besides Holyoke Police Department and Springfield, which is western Massachusetts. So Taunton is like 2 hours south of Boston. It's 2 hours north of Cape Cod, so it's sort of in the middle, and then it's next to New Bedford, Fall River, which, is a big area for heroin. And then New Bedford, you got a lot of like fishermen down there that traffic drugs through like boats and stuff, like Cape Cod.
Man,
It's
blowing my mind, because the more you talk about this area and how they operate, I'm not sure if any of you guys have seen the TV show Bates Motel, based on the movie.
Psycho. Because I actually met Anthony Perkins when I was little. He was friends with my dad.
This is exactly what I got to rewatch that show and like see if there's other little Easter eggs, because it's
because Anthony Perkins was married in Wellfleet, Massachusetts, at my church at Wellfleet Congregational, and he died of AIDS, and then his wife, even though he was married, his wife died in 9/11 on the plane, and he has two boys. Elvis, and I forget the other one. I grew up with these kids, and they went to school on Cape Cod, just like the other actors' kids that I grew up with. Tony Curtis's son, Nick Curtis, who was found dead of a heroin overdose in Provincetown, and I'll actually be doing a YouTube show with Dan Hennon next week, either Wednesday or Sunday, and we're going to be talking about Nick Curtis, my friend, who died, and how my other friend got set up for his death, and now he's dead. My other ex-boyfriend's dead, and pretty much every guy I've ever dated is dead. And a lot of them have connections to Hollywood.
Seconds. This has been DarkDox. We'll have to pick this up next time.
Yep.
I will go longer, but it's 10 o'clock, and I wonder if we just keep talking. Is it going to let us go longer? I'm curious, because we're still here, and it's kind of negative. So I tell you what, let's just keep going, and let's see if it cuts it off or not. I don't know.
Well, I actually have to go in a couple minutes because I have a phone call I was going to make. But I have a couple minutes I can stay on for.
For your end of things, I'll let Greg, ask, I guess, one more question, and we'll do one more song and do the outro. It's been a pleasure. Let's get back on the bandwagon if we can, and do this again next Sunday and pick up where we left off. Sound good?
Nice.
Okay, I think I'm doing my show during the day, so yeah, that would work.
All right, great. Sounds good.
Well, thank you so much, Christian.
Oh, thank you. Always a pleasure. Hey, Greg. So, do you got any closing questions, or Brendan? You got anything?
I got one more. All I want to know is, do you have any new songs coming out, and when are they coming out?
Yes. In fact, we are currently, I've been writing off and on for the past year, new stuff for Tales of Terror issue number 2, which we hope to have out for this Halloween. And a little sneak peek insider information. There is a Screeching Weasel song off of the EP Carnival of Schadenfreude, called The Parasite Murders, which is it's a kind of Ramones-esque kind of song about this B-film where there was like these parasites that infested people and turned them into serial killers. And so it's kind of like a zombie thing, but it's actually these like insect parasites that take over your body. But I want to take that song and cover it, but instead of the Parasite Murders, it's gonna be called the Clinton Murders, and the lyrics are gonna be about all of the the alleged or suspected dead people, including Seth Rich and all of the other people involved in investigations into the Clintons. So that's going to be a really fun video, and I'm probably going to that is probably going to take up a bunch of pages because I'm going to be taking the Clinton murders website and getting photos and testimonies and different things. It's going to be very similar to the Conspiracy of Silence comic. I'm also working on a Conspiracy of Silence chapter 2, which is going to be the Franklin cover of chapter 2, where they talk about Alicia Owen's story. So I'm still kind of in the conceptual process of continuing that series, and I really hope before I'm dead to essentially make a song and a comic for every chapter of the Franklin cover-up. And then once we, maybe every couple years, just take the Paul Benassi Fear and Loathing in Sacramento 4-page with that song, and then the new, chapter 2, Conspiracy of Silence, Alicia Owen's story, and then the next one, once we have 4 of those, release that as like a standalone, reprint of, so that way you can read in chronological orders chapter 1 through 4, and then listen to songs 1 through 4, and then we'll be working on 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we can release, 5 through 8, and then or just release 1 through 8, however we want to do that, but kind of to continue that whole thing, because I've gotten a lot of really interesting feedback on the Conspiracy of Silence portion of the comic and the song, being like, I've never heard of this, I can't believe it, this is insane, this really woke me up. I didn't believe in this Pedogate stuff until came out, and that song came out, music video, and I've been getting a lot of that. So I feel like us continuing to do that and bringing it up again and again with new stuff added on is really going to keep it fresh. And so I guess with that, I'm going to end the show with Conspiracy of Silence off of Tales of Terror 1. This has been a pleasure. I'd say let's pick this up next time. Greg, I'd love for you to send me a handful of tracks of yours this week so I can come up with some questions to ask you, and then we can kind of do this in reverse next Sunday. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. Conspiracy of Silence.
It's a web of intrigue that starts in our Holy of Holies, Boys Town, Nebraska, one of the most respected institutions in the United States, and spreads out like a spider web to Washington, D.C., right up to the steps of the nation's capital, the steps of the White House, involves some of the most respected and powerful and richest businessmen in this United States of America. And the centerpiece of the entire web is the use of children for sex and drug dealing and drug couriers, the compromising of politicians, the compromising of businessmen, but worst of all, the corruption of key institutions of government that have the duty and responsibility to make sure these things never happen.
like to thank everyone who tuned in tonight, and of course, Emmy Frost, Greg Fernandez Jr., and I guess still got Brendan on the line?
Yes.
Awesome, man. Hey, any last words, if anyone can hear this?
Keep up the good work, and thanks for the interest.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to see you again. Less than a month away. On July 13th, Saturday, we're going to be at the Bohemian Grove for their Cremation of Care once again. And then the next day, on Sunday, July 14th, we are going to be going over to the Bohemian Club in San Francisco. We're going to be playing some of these songs live, which is going to be interesting. We did not do that last year. See how that turns out. And Greg is printing out a 7-foot-tall statue of the printout of the statue of the owl being groped by Joe Biden. A little Photoshop job I did, which I believe was Brendan's idea. And when he mentioned that, I was like, that's hilarious. I have to do it. So tune in next Sunday, and we are going to be listening to some songs from Greg Fernandez Jr., and I'm going to go ahead and play you guys out.
If you find value in these broadcasts, please invest in your education and sanity at Eternal Affairs Media and DarkDox.com.
We hope the information you received was beneficial to your quest for truth and justice. Please visit us online at DarkDox.com to download shows, movies, other podcasts, PDF documents, music, and much more for free. No advertisements, no sign-ups, no terms of use, no censorship, no control. This is information warfare. This is the end of the transmission.